Welcome to Let's Talk Ads. We're here to push your growth marketing tips, fun and chats. Tune in, let's rock the show.
Hey, welcome back to Let's Talk Ads. My name is Andre. I'm the CEO of Admiral Media, and with me today, I'm extremely excited. Thomas, the famous Petit. Say hi. Maybe to those who don't know you yet, give a very short intro. Thomas and I, we met like, I don't know, at least like 10 years ago or something. Definitely a very important industry veteran and contributor to the entire community of marketing experts, I would say. But yeah, give a quick intro yourself, maybe.
Yeah, hi everyone. Like you can hear, I'm French. I met Andre in Berlin, more or less 10 years ago. Very excited to be here. I dedicate most of my work on growing subscription apps in particular. So that's my niche. Within subscription, I tend to touch a little bit everything: acquisition, monetization, onboarding, retention, data management. But a lot of advertising. So here let's talk ads.
Amazing. Happy to have you. To those guys who don't follow Thomas yet, definitely subscribe to his LinkedIn, Twitter. Do we still say Twitter? To his X
I've heard it's
profile?
crossing now. More and more people are
Yeah.
saying X. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely follow Thomas. He's constantly sharing amazing insights. Definitely worth a catch up here. Today we want to talk about a new buzzword. It's not social engineering; it's signal engineering. Is it a buzzword or is it a secret weapon? Basically, is the question today. But first of all, how would you describe signal engineering, Thomas? What does that mean to you? Where did you come across it?
I think I come up with the term, like I made it up, and probably other people would call it differently. I think it encompasses several things in it, and I did like it, so I'm trying to create it, but it doesn't have to be. It's not a standard term. What we're talking about here is the data signals that we send back to the ad networks to optimize campaigns from. And I think this can be engineered to help improve performance. So when we say data signal, that would be the events you optimize towards. I say signal because it doesn't have to be an event. It can be value, can be multiple events. That's why I call it signal. But they're basically the events that we optimize towards. So I'm telling Facebook I want to optimize toward trials. I'm telling Google I want to optimize towards revenue, or I'm telling TikTok that I want to optimize towards signups or onboarding complete. So this is what we're talking about, like the data that we fed back to the advertising network, and engineering, because we're trying to tweak it to squeeze a little bit more performance out of it.
But isn't that like what we're doing since years anyways, like event optimization? It's just a new term for it, or is it a more complex thing from a perspective?
It's a bit of both. It's a new term for something that you've been doing for years. I think I came up with the term because there's a bunch of things that we can do that often we forget. Like for a lot of people, the conversion signal is a bit of a set and forget. Like, oh, I have those that are auto track in the Meta SDK. I'm gonna use this, and they don't think twice about it. So, hey, you're an advanced practitioner, so of course you're thinking about it. But for a lot of people, it's not a natural. It's like, oh, I have these events to optimize to. But no, you can be very intentional about what you're doing. And the other reason, so maybe for you it's obvious. It's just not obvious to everyone. So I wanted to like to insist that it is important. The other one is that over the last few months, I've seen a bit more sophistication on this that I didn't necessarily think about in the past. And so I thought it was nice to discuss about it, like tweaking values and filtering events. And yeah, I don't know. I've seen a little bit more sophistication. So maybe after we can dig a little bit deeper in maybe we're not going to start with the most complex stuff because it's going to confuse everybody. But no, it's true that it always existed, but I'm seeing interesting developments recently on it. And I'm currently working with one particular company that actually goes quite beyond what I had done before. And so that inspired me to test other things afterward.
Okay. Are you able to, or can you share an example of this more complex?
Yes. So let's say you're using value optimization and not events. I'll go at one example instead of going at the same. if you've got a very high value user, extremely high value, let's say your game and you've got one of the whales, one of the super big spenders, like a massive spender, spend 500 or 1,000. Here, there is the question about the whales of, do I actually send the real value, which is what a lot of people are doing? Do I send less value or more value about these users? Me, in my subscription apps, very often I tend to fake the value of the most valuable users to put even more value, so that my intention here is to tell the network, give me more of those. Like this user is not worth $50, is actually worth 150, so that they would have the instruction to like, oh, this is extremely valuable. I need to find more of those. Like I'm trying to gear the inventory to go towards a particular direction. If a user is generating $5 for the app, that's great. Maybe I'm gonna fake it and say it was only $2 because I don't want so many of those. Like I'm trying to fake it a little bit. And I had this conversation, and it was funny because I was doing this for a subscription app. So basically, I was increasing the value of the most uh, monetizable users and lowering the least ones. And I was talking to someone who works in gaming who told me, "Oh, I do the opposite. I actually lower down the highest value users. So when somebody's spending 500, I'm actually only sending 50." I'm like, why would you do that? Like, it's kind of like you're limiting. But for me, it was going completely against what I was doing. There is also a very good logic in it, which is when you work on value event and you've got one of those whales, well, suddenly, just with one user, all the goals of the day can be fulfilled, and then the inventory goes completely nuts because that's it. The value is generated, and they serve you crap for the rest of the day. So that was an interesting consideration that I didn't have. That happens because in subscription, usually our variance is less than in e-commerce or in games. So I'm trying to tweak it to expand the variance of the least valuable and most valuable, so that the network would think differently. But I didn't think that in gaming in particular, where you've got a lot of people who pay zero and a tiny minority who pay an enormous amount of money, actually just one or two conversion can completely disrupt deliveries. So in this case, maybe it's worth reducing the variance because you've got too much of it. That's kind of an interesting approach that we end up doing the opposite. And in both cases, it does make sense. That was a pretty complex intro.
Uh, it sounds somehow readable. I wonder if this was like tested with a kind of hypothesis thing. Like I'm expecting this, and then a week later I'm checking actually if that proved right. I can imagine that it could work when I'm looking at TROAS campaigns on Google, for example, right? When I'm saying like, hey, my target was is 100, and I'm already with the first user giving it 100, then of course it will only send crap users. I can follow the thought here, but it's counterintuitive to mimic a lower value of a user. It's interesting concept. Have you tried it yourself?
Yeah. I mean, the increasing the value of the most valuable, and with hit and miss, you say, have you tested this? So I would say yes, to some extent. Like we're not just doing it randomly because it's a nice idea. So it's been tested. Does it work? Does it not work? No, because you know how it is with platform delivery. It's never a clean, perfect test. You never know. There are other factors. Oh yeah, suddenly it improved. Was it really that? I also had the creative winner at the same time. So it's never perfect, but it is tested. And I'll show you. For the most valuable users, like I'm really trying to gear towards that. And you asked me for one example, so it was this, but there were a few things that happened at the same time. So we were featuring lower value users and so on. And we do see over time that it compounds slowly towards the network sending us higher value. So if I was to compare my Facebook campaign from 6 months ago and 5 iterations and the one today, actually the cost per trial might be the same or worse, but we're significantly seeing that those trials are generating more value. Like Facebook is driving users that are more the ones that we're looking for, which makes it very tricky in reporting and all, because what we're seeing as a proxy metric is actually not better, but we're seeing better traffic quality. Now, can I really pin it down to, is it because I put more value on the highest valuable user or I filtered some others? This is very hard. Like you never get the perfect data to say that decision was the right one, and from the day to the next it was better. Like there's a lot of There's a lot of interference. There's a lot of noise. But I do see like, let's say over time with a bunch of change, I do see it's going in the right direction. So I'm happy about that. Sometimes it misfires or we fail. So I'll tell you one that didn't work on the way. I was working with a product that is offering both a trial period and no trial, so upfront subscription. Like maybe you can have a discount if you don't take the trial or whatever, like something like this. So I have a mix of events in there that some of them they're free trial that may or may not convert, and some of them get straight upfront subscription. Usually those are yearly in this case, so they're like immediately a lot of money. And that particular account does not have value optimization. They only work on events and we were optimizing for the sum of the two events. I'm like, how do I tell the network that actually those users are more valuable to me than the other ones? Because in average, one is 50 and the other one is 15 or whatever. And so we thought, you know what we're going to do? We're going to double send the event. We're going to tell the network that this user has converted twice. Because we were thinking more or less the value is twice or a little bit more. Let's send the event twice. Well, that didn't work. The network, they're not stupid, so they duplicate it. You can achieve this, but you need to change the transaction ID. You need to wait a little bit. It can't fire the two events just at the same time. So in this case, we were like all happy with our thing. Yeah, we're just gonna double the event and it's gonna go great. Actually, it didn't work. It didn't fail because it didn't hurt. But what happened is absolutely nothing because the ad network they duplicated. So it's just so sometimes you have to try a few things. Some work, some didn't, some don't, and we move forward. We're just experimenting along the way, and but I don't care about losing. I just need to win one time to have 10 experiment and effort that pay back. Like that's the thing about UA is the influence you can have on budget is so big that you have to keep trying at it until because the wins are very big and the losses, as long as you control them, it's just you have to try it, you know. But
I mean, what I find very difficult in these in this context in particular is that whatever you are changing on the events and signals side of things, it usually would take time until the ad network really understands, right? What you mentioned, there's no immediate spike after a change of the event setup. Usually, I would say. So
it does
at
take
the same
time.
time, sorry. At the same time, you're still doing product changes. The ad network makes changes. Competitors are making changes, and so on and so on. So having this development, what you mentioned, pinning it down to this one change is a difficult thing.
It's difficult. I mean, the thing here is if there are small increments that come, great. But I'm looking for step changes. Like I'm looking for relatively big changes. So if something very good or very bad happens, even if the data is not perfect or it comes later, you end up seeing it. Like if nothing happens, like if it's not clear enough, it's probably that nothing happens. So I keep trying. So I'm looking for big change. It's very hard to measure for smaller increments. This I would agree. But you also have like, of course, product change are going to happen. Seasonality is going to be different, and there's nothing you can do about that. And you're going to renew the creative and so on. I try to make changes that are quite significant. Like the signal you send is we don't make tiny changes all the time. Also because it takes dev resources, you know, to code it properly because it's not a default setup in the SDK. You actually have to tweak the event. You have to send the value through an API or whatever. Like there is work involved that you're not gonna change every week a little something. It's more I don't know. I remember one particular case. We worked for a month on establishing the fade value that we would send instead of the real value. And then if one day we just switch completely, I think we made one iteration since because some value had changed and we detected like a few errors. But that's it. Like it's not something that every week I'm gonna tweak the signal again and again. Like I mean, it's a you have a good comment in the sense that my initial point was we're never talking about the signals that we're sending the network. So that's why I bring this to the table. And it's not like the creative that you're testing dozens of creative. This one is think about it, make a big iteration, and move on. Like measure and move on. It's not something I'm gonna work on every week on week. It has a very different timeline than testing creative or other change that you can make more on an ongoing basis. Huh? Yeah, it's a good thing that we say it because I didn't mention, and maybe people think I'm like tweaking my event week in, week out. No, that does not happen.
So you wouldn't want to make changes constantly on the
No,
event sets, right? So we'll just
no, it's
confuse
not. It's not a
every.
good idea.
Mm, yeah. Um, you mentioned creators, like and the impact of such changes on the signals or events versus when I compare this to results that you get when you make creative changes, which you do constantly usually. Where would you how would you weight it? Like, is making creative changes having similar, better, worse impact versus having one change on the events kind of things? Have you seen a huge difference here?
The simple answer is that the creative has a more immediate, more visible, and bigger impact. The simpler answer is this. Right? I mean, it really brings immediate change. It's something you can really see the change in performance quite obviously, and it's something you're gonna have to do on the go because then even the best creative they fatigue and they don't reach all kind of audiences. So I mean, it's a non-stop work, no? And clearly, this is where a lot of the optimization on accounts is opening, like is happening. I do think they have like there is an intersection of the two. Like if I'm filtering like the creative, they work hand in hand. The network is gonna look a lot at the interaction on the creative, and it's gonna do a lot of the targeting work at the end of the day. And sort of, so I had this chat. I was discussing this topic with somebody at Headway, and we were saying people outside of the advertising industry, they think we do targeting on the platform. Like we target people of women between 18 and 25 who like mountains, men over 40 who like golf. And I mean, we never do that. I don't know. I haven't used maybe age in some context, but like
But still the
the
secret.
yeah, the interest and categories in Facebook, and you can play with it sometimes, but that's not how the targeting is done. Like, and the way I see we do the targeting is both the event we stand back because the platform is going to try to optimize and they do most of this work. It's just I'm telling Facebook or Google, I want this is my goal, this is my conversion. Go look for those, and they're doing this job. But the reality is that a lot of the targeting is done through the creative. I don't need to filter. I want only one gender. I want only women or men. If the creative is obvious enough that it's talking to a particular audience, the network is going to realize it very fast and is going to serve it in a large majority to the relevant audience. So the like sort of demographic and interest like age, gender, and so on. I think they're actually not great targeting in many cases. Like sometimes they are relevant depending the product and they are nuanced to it. But the targeting you can do through the creative is the most important ones. I think having the event on top helps nail a little bit of both. Like because sometimes the creative is driving too much of the filter, like sort of it's a very strong one, but I still want to tell the platform, hey, remember, this is the goal I'm trying to achieve. Like, this is the message, but this is the goal. And also because the creative might have very different angles. I might have completely different creatives to talk to the different segments of my audience. Maybe I have more hardcore user, more casual user, and I'm going to have sets of creative that are completely different. But I'm going to tell the platform, hey, this is still the conversion that I want them to achieve. Like, so I think they work hand in hand. But to your question, yeah, the creative is a much more is a bigger impact and more immediate. The other one is a little bit more blurry. I don't think it means we shouldn't touch it. But, yeah.
Are you usually getting involved in? I'm jumping a little bit into topics here. I'm sorry, but are you getting some involved because it just pops up in my mind sometimes? Are you getting involved in a product improvement sometimes, like kind of conversion rate optimization, that you really look into the funnel of the how users get into free trials and how do they convert on the paywall? Is it something where you would see a marketer should get involved? Are you getting involved in these topics, or are you only looking at the Facebook accounts and would recommend to specialize in that?
No, me, I'm also looking at the other one, but I guess partly it's personal interest. I like to be a little bit on both sides, on like where's the traffic coming from, but like can we optimize the onboarding on the monetization side as well. So personally, I like to work a little bit on both sides. It came initially I remember like very long time ago when I was still a full-time employee. Uh, long time ago. Um, at some point, like so, I was only working on the acquisition side, like on paid traffic, Facebook campaigns, and so on. And at some point, I felt that I was grinding for very, very small improvements on Facebook side. Like on the levers that I had, like that's it. We had found like very, very good creatives. The events, I think the level of bidding was quite perfect. We had a very sophisticated structure. It was a while ago. So like a lot of audiences, a lot of ad groups. And I could see that the change that I was making, the let's say we're at the top of the improvement curve. Like we're scratching for the last percent, you know? So a lot of effort for little impact. And I realized with that product that actually the onboarding was not great. It was leaking a lot. There was a lot of potential for improvement and all. And that if I wanted to have better result on the acquisition side, I would have to make change there. Otherwise, I would be limited. So it started because I was frustrated and I felt that my effort was wasted on like scratching for 1% when there was a 30% improvement next door. So I started working more on onboarding and monetization initially to improve my acquisition result. Like that was an intentional goal. Then I don't know. I know profiles who work a little bit on both, but the most common is to have specialized people, more on acquisition, and then you depend on the other one. Doesn't mean you can't like throw ideas, inspiration. You can feel sometimes when something is under optimized, and vice versa as well. Like the people who work on monetization, obviously they depend a lot on what kind of traffic is coming, who are we talking like what are we communicating to users and so on. I mean, me, I find a lot of interest working on both sides, but it's true in practice, it's not the most common. So I do like working, you know, and gives you also a perspective of. I mean, you can tweak a little bit both sides to get the results. Yeah. So for me, yeah, it's part of the fun actually to have a bit of both, but it's not the most common. At some point, you need to. Not everybody can be the. How is it? Jack of all trades, no?
The thing is, what I've let's say when I'm reading through my LinkedIn bubble comments, sometimes there's some comment popping up like or post popping up saying agencies are dying now because automation takes over and you don't need an agency anymore and you don't need specialists anymore. Just put your budget and let Facebook decide whatever. But this is being told since I don't know since when I'm in the industry, but at least the last 10 years, with Google app campaigns automating a lot more and stuff. But in fact, it just becomes more and more technical. And this is also why in my recruiting for my agency, I put a lot of effort into understanding how much does a candidate understand attribution tracking, SK ad network stuff. And this leads to the point that these people have less time to actually invest this in product thinking and product optimization stuff. So where do you see this going forward? Like, will this more automation? You need to have less knowledge in tech. Can you invest a time into product actually, or where do you see this going?
It's clear there has been a lot of automation on the platform side, and a lot of the work that a media buyer was doing 5 or 10 years ago, they're not doing it today. It doesn't mean this job has vanished. It's just it's shifted in where you work. So partly more work on the creative. I mean, we're a lot more sophisticated today on creative than we were back then. So they removed a lot of levers on bidding, in particular on audiences, on targeting. And then it put more importance on creative iteration, and it put more importance in product and, in my opinion, in the signal that you can send there because it's related. But it's just a shift sometimes for more complexity, like because in appearance, like oh now the platform is delivering all automatically. I don't have to like decide which audience at which price and so on. But then the next problem I'm dealing with is even more complex. So I don't know. I took a break last month for a little while, and then there's this news that Apple has to let developers charge in the US or without enough payment, which is a very big potential shift in the industry and all. And I was on my way back, and a friend of mine was joking. He was like, "Dude, you're taking holiday. When you're coming back, your job doesn't exist anymore." Because I work a lot with IABs. I was like, "It's actually the opposite. Like this decision, because it gives a choice to developers. Now we've got IAPs and direct payment, it brings even more demand for people like me. So when like sort of the agencies are dying, I mean, there's always going to be people who are like need to bring traffic to their product, and agency is one of the ways to do it. And for a lot of people, it's a good way to do it. I don't think that the platform automating a lot of the delivery is removing that component. It's just the value you're bringing to clients might have shift. Sometimes it's more lucrative, sometimes it's more technical because you explain them how to read through attribution, what's the real impact. Sometimes it might be a more product change and monetization change. And maybe 5 years ago, it would have been different. You would have explained which audience, but there's just a shift. But I think it makes it even more important, even more valuable, and because it's more complex, the simplification of the platform bring complexity elsewhere. So I'm not too afraid for both our work, to be honest. Like Apple, Google can keep automating whatever they want. Like actually, the more they do, the more I've got people calling me to try to understand what they're actually doing.
Let's jump back a little bit to this signal engineering. I had another thought here. Most of the time we were talking about like Meta, maybe TikTok, and maybe even Google. Let's assume you apply this signal engineering thing to those networks. Would you do the same for networks like Admiral? Do you think that these algorithms behave the same? Would you apply different, I would call it event multipliers to the different networks because their algorithms work differently, or how do you approach that?
That's a very good question. I'm still on the way on working on it, so I don't have a definite answer. But like clearly, different networks behave differently, and they interpret the signal differently. They also have different level of sophistication. Like TikTok is a little bit more primitive. Clearly, the one from Meta is very sophisticated and understands very well differences, which can lead to a lot of disruption as well when you're changing those signals. So it's also a bad thing sometimes that they're very. The one from Google has a lot of inertia sometimes. Like so, they're very different each. So it leads you to potentially making different choices, but then you're not going to send a different signal to every single network. Like there's also reasonably not necessarily possible. I think the way to so there are two ways to approach this. The first one is there is an overall logic that I'm going to apply to all these networks at the same time. For example, let's say that I realized that I was with a new colleagues just before this call, and I don't know, it must be like 19 or 20 years old, and he was telling me that he's got 50 subscription, but he's not paying for any of them because he's canceling the auto trial immediately. And that he had a second phone number in the US for 2 months, jumping from a trial to another, and so on. Yeah, the young people, they cancel trials like in a very large proportion, and a lot of subscription are users below 21 years old. They're pain in the ass. They always cancel the trial. Like, okay, let's stop sending the networks trial below 21 years old because their conversion rate is just too low. This is probably a decision that I would apply to all the networks at the same time. I would stop sending it to Uplovin and to Google and to Meta and to TikTok just because the reality of the business that this signal is wrong for that party. There are apps that monetize well under 21. It's not a generality, but I take it as an example. For that particular app, the drop in conversion was for everybody, so we just send it to everybody. But then we realized, for example, that Meta was not dealing very well with the value optimization we're using, but then Uplovin was dealing with it very well. So on Uplovin, we doubled down on value optimization, and on Facebook, we iterated on which events we're optimizing towards, just because they reacted like this. So we took a little bit of customization. In some case, it's because I see that one particular network is sending me a type of traffic that I wouldn't want. Let's come back on the sub 21 years, for example. Maybe one particular network is over-indexing on this audience because they have a lot of it available, because maybe my creative are attracting this kind of audience or whatever. And maybe I'm seeing the trial to pay rate crash completely on that particular network. Maybe I'm going to do the effort on that network because I identified a problem and I'm going to filter this. But maybe it's not a problem on Facebook and Apple, and it's a problem on Google and TikTok. So sometimes you can personalize. I think not to over-engineer anything. Don't try to optimize the signal for every single network all the time. But it's more when you detect a big issue, like that network has a lot of traffic. We see some good traction on the creative. We know they have a huge audience. There's a huge scalability. But in the funnel, we see one step that completely fails. This is where it can help bring that network. And it doesn't mean you're going to apply this tweak or this event to all the network. It's just you identify that network at this particular problem. And so you would do it. But that's more of an edge case. I would say in the majority of cases, the choices that we make about some events that we're filtering out or some value that we're going to increase or things like this, they're probably going to apply to all the networks. Assuming they're sophisticated enough to receive a signal, one we didn't mention here is Apple, who doesn't see anything beyond the click. So obviously, there's no senior engineering here.
Oh, you just take what you get here. Interesting. The point of when is it over engineering is a very complex question. Sometimes I see campaigns and apps that are advertising with okayish budget, and they've started building data science teams and whatsoever. And I think, guys, this is complete over engineering for what you're doing here. Like, you're spending so much money on these people, which you could put into Facebook instead, and still have the same results from my perspective. But then on the other side, there's the clients that spend 400,000 a day on the web funnel campaign or whatsoever. And of course, for them, a little bit of over engineering could make sense because a little percent here or there can make a huge difference, right? But yeah, where's the threshold? This is very hard to define.
Yeah, it's very hard to find. There's a balance. Obviously, different company cultures, we put this at different moment of time. So it's not necessarily an amount in that spend or an amount in headcount or whatever. But it's clear it's not for everybody. Don't do this at home. I also see like sometimes Duolingo release some quite inspiring product stuff on the blog sometimes. And then everybody wants to copy it. I'm like, yeah, except they've got 500 million active users to run this test. And you've got 5,000 users. Like, just no, like, stop your A/B test. It's just like maybe copy the feature if you think it's great, but like, don't copy the process. Like, it's not like just going. So yeah, it's not for everybody. I think here is a good reminder. Tweaking the events and so on is not your priority at the beginning. Like, it's clearly a more advanced, and some bigs might be simple. There are also layers. No, maybe I was discussing with Marcus about qualifying the trials, like which trials are the best. And it's true that you start, and with subscription business, very often the main event is gonna optimize it towards all kind of trials, and then we work on this. If you realize there is a problem with this event, you can take a very simple version of this engineering and say, I'm just gonna filter those, and that's it. The value model I was telling you about, like, and very often they're actually predictive model. They're not real revenue because this is too delayed. So what the value we're sending to the platform is going to be, we think that user is going to be 50, so I'm going to send 80. But in practice, maybe they were 20. Of course, this requires more sophistication, a team to build this model. Then you need to inject this revenue onto the device. Like, don't do this at the beginning. It's stupid. Like, start. And anyway, value optimization campaign require a lot more data and are a bit more volatile than even optimization. If you're just starting and you're spending 1K a day on Facebook, don't do that. Like, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. You probably don't have the team to do it right anyway. And you probably have big gains elsewhere, like much bigger gains. Let's not scrap. So it's a good reminder that you put that there are good moments to do different things, and a lot of what I said is not. It shouldn't be the concern of 90% of marketers. I'm just grinding at the edge of what we can do, but it's clearly the bulk of the prize is elsewhere. So keep iterating on your creative, keep understanding your attribution. We're just having fun here.
No, absolutely. Common mismanagement approach that I see is investing a lot on tons of technical stuff, but completely underinvesting on creative production. Like, there's maybe one half part-time designer doing something while you're still spending a lot on Facebook, right? And no willingness to increase and buy content creators' content whatsoever, but expecting magic results.
Well, when I said the job of a media buyer completely changed in the last year, it's clear that there's less like tweaking. I call it intraday trading, which is like changing the budget and the bids all the time and like being like a trader on micro decision. No, let it go. And that's why the focus is not creative. But the reality is, what levers do we have left? The budget, the goal, which is the signal, and the creative. The reality is that 80% of the effort or 90% of the effort should be on the creative. Like, also reading the results and interpreting the results. But like, we have less levers, but it's clear that tripling the investment on creative is the most likely to produce an immediate impact. And if you do everything else perfect, but you under index and you have two creative that came out and you're still using the same, the likelihood you can have good results is very low. It's very low. Yeah, there's clearly a prioritization here. So I like working on the other topic, on attribution and on the signal. But the real battle is on the creative side. It's clear, and this is where you have the most impact.
And the biggest playground, let's say. You can find out many things, what works, what doesn't, what sticks, what doesn't stick.
Infinite playground. Like now, because we can and we should like experiment with a lot more creative. So I don't know, like 5 years ago, I was testing 10 creative per month, and now we're testing 50 per week. Like it is completely crazy. The acceleration, also thanks to AI, I know, but also the necessity that we have. But because it's an infinite quest. You find a winner, you want a winner on another segment, and then the winner fatigue, and you want another winner, and then there's the new trend on TikTok, and then there's a new music that is trending, there's the new format of hook that is trending, and like it's an infinite quest. It's clear.
Absolutely. I have some more questions, Thomas. I would love to talk more about web funnels, web to app campaigns, and whatnot, but I think this will kill this podcast here. Let's have follow-up sessions. So thank you for taking the time and having this open conversation. I really appreciate your input as always, and I would be super happy to welcome you again very soon. To the audience, follow Thomas. That's an order, not a recommendation. And I hope to see or you hear me back with the next session of Let's Talk S. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
We're here to boost your growth, marketing tips, fun and chats.